Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual neurolinguistic programming and cognitive behavior psychotherapist specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one sessions in both French or English, and also do group setting. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at lifecoach.drdanamzallag.com. Today, I'm very excited to have for our second episode of season 29 a very special guest and the self-help psychic, Tabitha Stitt. And just like every of my past episode, I will leave it up to the guests to properly introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Tabitha, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dan. I am very excited to be here. I appreciate you having me on. This is wonderful. I'm just feeling all the energy, so this is exciting. Yes, so the self-help psychic. So I'm a psychic medium. It wasn't always like that. I actually started off as a licensed school teacher, and then I became a Reiki master practitioner. And once I got into Reiki, which is energy healing, that's when I started receiving clairvoyant messages, and I didn't know what the heck they were coming through. And that's when I started to work with another medium, and she was my mentor for a few years, and she really brought out this mediumistic part within me. And from there, I started noticing when I worked with clients, I would help them work with their personal lives rather than bringing through loved ones. Spirit wanted me to talk about their own lives, and a lot of it was personal development, spiritual development, and hence that's how I got my name, the self-help psychic. So that's pretty much it if we summarize it super quickly. But yes, again, I'm very excited to be here. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for being here as well. I really appreciate it. And like I said, a lot of people, um, what we're looking here is people are wondering, are self-help psychic kind of like creating an environment just for those who actually have lost a loved one and they could communicate with the dead or anything of that sort? So how does that work exactly? Because a lot of people are just wondering, where's all that coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So if I'm understanding correctly, so as a psychic medium, I can still bring through loved ones. And I think that it's very, very helpful and very healing. For many years I was doing this and I didn't recognize that this work is healing. Verbalizing, as you know, as a podcast host myself as well, like just conveying someone's story and hearing that verbally is very, very healing. And so when we sit, I say we as other psychic mediums as well, when we sit here as a channel or a conduit or that instrument or that medium platform, then we set ourselves up to relay messages from someone's loved one. And so I can do that as well. I always leave it up to spirit. I say spirit as kind of a universal terminology, but you can understand it as the universe or consciousness. And so I work both ways. So I work more psychically for overall, but I do bring through loved ones also mediumistically.
Wow. So then what exactly, when someone come to you, what is the most common type of issue they're dealing with? Are they something that they're looking to find answers in their life? Are they looking to communicate with loved one? Are they looking to solve a relationship problem? What is the most common issue?
Yeah, so I think it depends on who you decide to work with. So, us as psychic mediums, we each have our own way of working. And so, my clients in particular, a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll just say, Hey, leave it open-ended. They're like, leave it open-ended. Tell me whatever spirit has to give to me. But it's much deeper than that. I think that any messages that we receive or that is conveyed through me to my clients is very uplifting and empowering. And again, that word healing is probably going to surface quite a few times throughout this episode. But really, I think they're looking for direction. I think deep down they know really what it is that they need to do or what they would like to do. But oftentimes I think they're wanting confirmation. It's like when you hear something or when you see a sign, and you know it, like you can feel it deep within you. And so it gives them a little bit of confirmation. It's like so many times they'll hear it and they're like, oh my God, I just knew that. Or they'll say like, how did you know that?
Mhm.
And so it gives them that inspiration and that hope. I think that they're looking for hope and they're looking for guidance, but really it can be any type of area of their life. A lot of times, I think most commonly what I experience is relationship questions. It really kind of boils down to that. Not all the times, but a lot of times I'll notice that question will surface as far as their significant other or any ideas of what spirit is encouraging me to do. And so, just that connection, I would believe, like, and feeling that inspiration as well. So I think relationship would probably be the biggest. And then the other one for me, in the areas that I focus on mainly is also career, and their passions and following their passions and what spirit has to offer them, in messages. Yes.
Now, a lot of people, like when they ask me, like when I tell them I'm a psychotherapist, they're always afraid that I'm going to analyze them. So people are afraid as well that when you tell them that you're a psychic, that you may find some secret about themselves that they're too afraid to disclose.
Yeah, I do. Oftentimes, the clients that I bring through or that come to me, they've never had a reading before. So I immediately ease their mind right from the get-go, like, hey, nothing scary will emerge from these messages. And I think that is often a misconception, like maybe what you were saying as well with what you do also. Um, and so I want to ease their mind with that. But yeah, with me personally, I don't think I've ever had a scary message pop up. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't messages that come through that will chat about like a challenge that they're going through or some sort of issue,
Mhm.
but nothing ever scary. I'm not saying, "Oh my God, watch out for the truck coming down." It's not like that. It's very inspirational messages for sure. But I can understand, especially if you've never had a reading before, that issue or that concern would be there, that fear. But yeah, I've never personally had anything like that.
Because I did actually. So then when they ask me, what do I do? And I tell them I'm a psychotherapist, they said, oh, that's not really the group that I want to be in.
Oh,
So they just like, because the thing is that a lot of people are somewhat just showing a facade of who they are, but deep inside they know that they're not the person that they try to express or convey to others. So that in itself, they're afraid that other people may read into that.
for sure. I do believe that as humans, we're all trying to figure this thing out. And I always say that. I think we're all just trying to, figure it out. We do tend to, not that we're intentionally putting on a mask or anything like that, but we may be doing it subconsciously in order to help protect ourselves, or we're still trying to discover who we are. And so oftentimes people, including myself as well, are afraid to see maybe that darker side, quote unquote, or that shadow aspect as well.
Yes,
But
yes.
really that's here to help us discover even more about ourselves and to shine light on those areas that may be uncomfortable. Yeah.
Yes, and that's for many actually. And the thing is, it's interesting because, like for me, I never thought I would go into that field until I knew that I had a gift. Now, did you feel that you woke up one day and you say, "I have the gift to become like a self-help psychic"?
I think when I discovered it, it was the very first time I worked with a Reiki client of mine, actually. Well, actually, she was a classmate of mine. It was the very first time I ever gave Reiki to someone. She was lying on the Reiki table, and I was at the base of her feet, and all of a sudden, this was the first time I ever experienced clairvoyance. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know what was happening. It felt very loving, but I looked at her and I saw what appeared as a Native American man standing at the top of her head, and he kept saying thank you to me. He was thanking me for helping her heal, and he said it over and over and over again. And then afterwards, I told her about it and the other classmates that were there, and the teacher and the mentor. And they kind of just stared, they were looking at me, and I didn't really know much of it because I think I was so open at the time that I was not getting in my own way because I didn't even know what was even happening. I was just like, hey, this is what happened. And so looking back on it, that was the first time I experienced clairvoyance, at least that I can recall that vividly. And so from there, each time I would give someone Reiki, I kept receiving these visions, and I would hear these messages, not audibly, like externally out loud, but internally. And so that's kind of when I discovered, hey, there's something here. There's something more to this.
Mhm.
And I think once I opened myself up to that world of this energy healing, that's when, I say God, but spirit, God, I was like, okay, Tabitha, if this is what you're wanting to do, then here's other ways of practicing this. So, I've always been into like oracle cards as well. And that was when I was much younger, but this is really when I kind of discovered that. And that was probably about 15 years ago.
15 years. Wow. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I used to be
Yeah.
a transportation broker beforehand as being a business consultant, and I've completed my doctorate degree in 2013. So this is when I knew that before I started, I said, you know what? I need to do something else with my life because I didn't feel fulfilled. And I think a lot of people out there as well, Tabitha, is that they need to find their calling because it is said that 86% of Americans are miserable in their job. They just stay there because they have to pay the bills, and then they feel unfulfilled. They feel depressed. Why do you think there's so much depression in this country? And there's like close to 28% of the population that is dealing with one form of mental health condition. And that's for those who actually declare it to their doctors. Imagine those who do not.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
That
Hmm.
causes them to be able to hold everything in, not disclose this to anyone to get the help that they need. And then after that, they get burned out at their job. They get disgusted about their family life, whatever, because they always associate everything to the internal problem that they could not basically solve on their own. And then because of that, they create an environment that it becomes so toxic. And that's why, again, maybe divorces are so high.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, it's unfortunate and simultaneously, it's the struggle that helps us see the lighter side as well. Because in my opinion, at least, when someone is feeling this depression or feeling this struggle or feeling this separation from their passions, that is spirit or that is your soul calling you to focus more on your passions, to have that happiness. And I know that it's challenging and it's not easy because, of course, we have to, we have responsibilities, we have to bring in the money, we have to pay the bills. And I always say there's always a way. There's always a way. I ended up resigning and I was terrified to do it, but something was calling me to do it. And I just feel like, it's hard to trust something that you don't see. But that's really what this all comes down to is trusting in your own intuition and trusting in these feelings that you're getting. Because if you're in a job that feels miserable, it's sucking the life out of you, or there's a lot of like drama, or the fluorescent lighting in the building, that's all very far away from your natural element and your natural being, as far as Mother Nature goes and who we are as human beings. And so if you're feeling that from my perspective, that is your higher calling asking you to pay more attention to your passions. And I think more and more people are starting to find ways that allow them to use their passions in a format that can bring in money as well. So I'm not suggesting necessarily, quit your job immediately, but if you can find some sort of segue into utilizing your passions that will help bring in that monetary aspect of living, eventually you'll find a way to where you can even do it full time as well. And then the better that you feel, more aligned with your soul, you'll just feel it. It'll just be a feeling, it'll be a knowing, and that's the direction to go. That's the way to go. Is this feeling. And now I'm not saying I'm not saying it's not going to be scary, because I think that's where a lot of us get tripped up, is that we think that it's not going to be scary, and yet it will certainly be scary. It'll be fearful. There's a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And that book really transformed my life. I forget who the author is, unfortunately, at this time. I know it's a woman that wrote it, but it was just so helpful. And she's like, you're going to feel the fear, but the difference is you still continue to take action. And little bit by little bit, eventually you'll find yourself in alignment with your soul, and you'll know that because it'll just feel liberating, and again, you'll still have struggles here and there. Things are not going to be always super peachy. There's days where I feel down in the dumps, and then the next day I'm like, okay, everything's gonna be okay.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so just trusting in yourself really, and having that support also, whether it's therapy or counseling or even psychic mediumship as well. There's alternative methods for healing as well, but having that support in addition to following your calling and following those little nudges, Spirit's going to continue to help you along your path. You're going to receive signs, and allow yourself to be open to what is coming for you in the most in the highest way. That topic I'm very passionate about, as you can tell. So
Yeah, I could hear in your voice definitely
yeah.
have that passion. But then again, I would think that a lot of people, when they don't have, and you mentioned the word support a few times, they, either they navigate life alone, they don't have a significant other, they don't have kids to be able to get to see when they need to see them, etc. Loneliness in this country is kind of an epidemic nowadays, and but the thing is that they prefer to be in a bad relationship than
Mhm.
being alone. And then because they're in a bad relationship, they create internal resentment. And that in itself causes them to feel more neglected, more disrespect, because they allow so much crap happening in their lives that then it brings them to a point of being in a vicious cycle. So what do I prefer? Being alone and lonely, or being with someone but yet miserable? So then they just don't know how to distance themselves from those toxic relationships.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, like, absolutely with everything that you're saying, 100%, because a lot of times we stay in relationships because it's comfortable, but not really. It's like it's uncomfortable, but it's in our comfort zone, so we stay there and we learn that it's almost like this toxicity or this manipulation in a way. And it's scary to move outside of that comfort zone. But again, that's where you're going to grow. And you had mentioned, being alone can be lonely, but honestly, like being alone doesn't necessarily mean that you are lonely. I love being, I'm in a relationship and a loving relationship, and I feel very grateful and lucky that's happened. But that's not how it was before. I was in quite an unhealthy relationship previously, and I remember just being on the ground and I was crying, and I just felt like we just didn't match. But there, and I remember calling out to God, like, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender. And then shortly after that, we finally split up. And that was scary. That was scary, breaking it off, and that was terrifying because I didn't know what to expect. But again, finding that trust, and if you are someone that is in that position where you are alone, I can imagine that, like, but there's other support out there. And honestly, I will say this, whether I was with someone or not, or I've had my share of not being in a relationship as well. And this might sound kind of like far out there, but not really. The thing that always helps me feel connected is nature. I swear to God, like nature, being in nature, you really start to see things differently. You start to recognize that you're not really alone because it's your connection to this higher power, this higher entity. And so if you are feeling alone, that's something that I would strongly recommend. And also, just being in some sort of community, right? We're so addicted to our phones and social media, and the things that social media, the things that you're being fed on social media is taking you away from your spirit and from your soul. And it's making you feel distant from who you are. And I say this because I have personally felt this way as well. And so setting the phone down for a minute and finding a group or a meetup, I think there's a website called Meetup, or a community of other people that, whether it's quilting or, it could be anything. But you can find your own community where you might not be looking for a specific intimate relationship, but finding that connection and allowing yourself to be put out there. And just as an example, really quickly, and this actually perfectly aligns with what you just mentioned earlier, just this morning. I felt so alone. I felt so sad because I'm concerned about like, this is a different topic for another day, but the trees, some of my trees feel like they're dying and they're depleting the nutrients and I'm starting to panic and worry because there's these massive trees. And then I hear, these guys show up on the road and I see these massive trucks out on the side of the road. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to cut down the trees. They're going to trim them too much. And so I frantically run out there. And these guys were so kind and so nice and so reassuring. And I was just so happy that I took a moment to talk to them. And I was scared and I was nervous because I was like, oh God, what are they going to think? But afterwards, I walked away and they're still going to trim the trees, but they saw my concern and they were just so reassuring. And that word came to me. Oh my God, at first I felt so alone in this. I felt so worried. And then I felt connected. Like these guys, it just felt good to connect with them. So even though they were a stranger and I may never see them ever again in my life, I immediately turned the whole day around. I felt so much better. So even little moments like that can truly, truly help you. It doesn't have to be an intimate, romantic relationship, in this moment, of course, but just little connections help give you that reassurance. Especially if you're feeling lonely or feeling lost, allowing yourself to, feel a little vulnerable and a little nervous, and allowing yourself to do that's very helpful as well.
Well, it's interesting that you are psychic because you did read my mind when it comes to when it comes to social media. And this is a topic I want to talk about regarding people comparing themselves to what they see on social media, and that causes them to, under evaluate their value in self. So this is a really important topic because I see a lot of so much fakeness in social media about how people live their so-called life and saying, oh, this is I'm going on a private jet to my meeting, blah, 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 when this jet is obviously in the ground and is being rented for $500 an hour. But yet, a lot of people don't know that, oh my God, look at them, they're so successful, and look, I am here, I'm miserable in my job, it's a dead-end job, and so on and so forth. So the key here is to ignore. I mean, if you're going to social media just for entertainment purposes, then do it. Watch a few videos that can inspire you. But if it's to go in to compare your life with theirs, then you're on the wrong track.
Yeah, and I think discernment is key here because again, social media is going to they know like the algorithm, whatever it is that does it, they're going to feed you things that which is so interesting that it's called your feed because it's what you're consuming energetically, right? And so be mindful of what it is that you're actually seeing, and if it doesn't feel good, if it doesn't resonate, then allow yourself some time away from social media. And then the opposite side of the spectrum is you can use it for inspiration. If there is something that you see and you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to have a jet or even rent it for a day, that could be inspiration to eventually make that a goal of yours, or and that's just an example. But yeah, discernment is key here, and also allowing yourself just the room to breathe and to recognize that it is kind of taking us away from this one-on-one connection, or from this this connection of just human existence, right? We're all humans trying to figure this out. And so if you're finding yourself looking at social media or the news or whatever it is, recognize that, is it true? Maybe, maybe not. And how's it making you feel? And if it's causing some sort of anger in you, maybe that's a passion of yours. Maybe you want to help in some way. If there's something impacting you, then you can use that as fuel to figure out, okay, well, I'm very super passionate about this. What can I do that is constructive? Okay, so maybe emailing your local representative or your state representative. So just taking a little action is going to help you feel more in control of something that would otherwise feel out of control. So just even a small step is going to help you feel so much better. But yeah, social media, it's good in some way, but really it can be very mind controlling, and not necessarily in a good way. So I think it depends on how you use the tool. If you see it as a tool.
Exactly, yes. And some people, like, unfortunately, because it has become a drug, unfortunately for many, or I would say more of an addiction. And just like food addiction, just like for anything out there, sometimes when you allow to watch it for too long or to spend too much time on it, this is where it becomes too controlling, and it start taking control of your life. And that's where people have to dissociate themselves sometime to take, like we have like fasting when we don't eat. Maybe people should have a social media fast.
I love that.
Detach themselves completely, putting the phone away or removing the apps from their phone or hiding the app from their phone, and just use the phone for communication purposes, either texting or calling their loved one, but not connect at all to social media. And you know what? It's very, very liberating, Tabitha, very much so, because I did that. I did like a few months ago. And of course, most of my work and most of my marketing for my services has to be on social media, but I use it primarily for work, not for entertainment purposes. So for me, I don't have that kind of addiction, but I can understand many come to me because they have social media addiction, and it can be really, really detrimental to your health long term.
Yes, and I would say that the cure, one of the cures, one of the I'm trying to think of the way to explain it. The thing that's going to help with that is again to get out into Mother Nature. So, my husband and I are actually even considering getting like a wired phone hooked to our home, and like you said, like we do need a phone, and it's helpful because if someone were to need to reach out to us, we'll be available. But even getting an old school flip phone, I think it comes down to our own responsibilities. We have to be responsible for our actions and those things that are depleting our energy. And so, if I think awareness is the very first step. So if you are aware that it's impacting you negatively and you don't really like it and you don't like the feeling of it, then you absolutely have the power to change that. I know it's not going to be easy, but you will begin to feel so much more liberated and connected to this source, to this spirit, to this God, and allowing yourself to open up in more of an expansive way, because it's like you have to see yourself, like distance it. Like sometimes I do it myself. I get so caught up in what it is that I'm researching or looking at. And then it's like I pull my phone physically away from my face and I look at it at more of a distance. And I just think to myself, wow, I need to set this down. Like this is this is driving me nuts.
Mhm.
And I think that's what's happening to us on a collective aspect. It's good on one hand, but finding that balance with Mother Nature is really going to help heal you, I promise.
I agree, definitely. But so before we end the podcast here, Tabitha, if you could tell our listeners, where can anyone find you just in case they need to be able to get the assistance that you can provide?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you feel drawn to working with me, I know that it's a good connection because you have to listen to your intuition. So my website is tabithastitt.com. And then also, another website of mine is theselfhelpsychic.com as well. They'll both revert you back to the same space, but you can connect with me there. And that's how we can connect and move forward. And I can provide readings. And I also have lots of self-help tools that will help you navigate and discover more about your passions, and following that as well, and giving you that gusto to follow those passions.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Tabitha, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. And again, thank you sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation and willingness to share your remarkable, incredible psychic knowledge with our large and loyal audience. Now, to our millions of listeners out there, we hope that you've enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. And we are excited for what's ahead in season 29 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. Now, here are some concluding words of wisdom. When you turn inward in search of answers, trust that your soul already holds the wisdom you seek. Every question you ask is an invitation to reconnect with your inner truth. The universe whispers through intuition, symbols, and synchronicities. Listen closely. Your higher self is not distant, it's the quiet voice beneath your voice. Even when clarity feels far away, your effort to tune is in healing in itself. Let patience be your guide and trust that every insight arrives in divine timing. You're not lost. You're learning to see with your new eyes. Keep showing up. The answers are unfolding with every breath. My name is Dr. Dan Amzallag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life.